Good morning, everyone. Glad you could join us for an hour of discussing dry beans. Does this doesn't seem like Roundup, does it? It's not 20 below and the wind blowing and it's stormy. Doesn't seem quite right, but we'll take it anyway. So as I was driving up here this morning, enjoying the nice roads, and it was an easy drive, and thought back in my years with the Roundup. I'm hitting nearly 40 years that I've given presentations here. I started my career here in Ramsey County as assistant county agent a long time ago. And my first presentation was in 1984. I talked about sunflower insects. I had to do it in the main room. I was a rookie. I was nervous as heck, but got through it anyway. And I'm still nervous. No, I feel pretty comfortable. I'm pleased to spend a little time talking with you about dry bean. So I'm going to cover some agronomic things. Emphasize some of our publications and what's contained in there. With the short time that I had to visit with you, I can't get into a lot of depth, but hopefully we'll cover some things of value to you. And then following that, Sam Markell will spend the last half of the program talking about disease management in dry bean. So here we go. Easy. Here's the topics that I'd like to visit with you about. They include, we'll take a look at the variety guide. I do have a nice pile of the hard copies here, so please grab one. And in fact, maybe we could have them. Sam, would you mind passing those out to anyone that might be interested? I should have almost enough for the people that are here. That might be more useful if you have those. So, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about a plant establishment table that I've put together. And then we'll talk about some of the recent production publications that we have, and then we'll finish up with a couple other opportunities to take in some dry bean meetings. Oh yes, I do want to mention North Harvest. We'll see the logo on there. North Harvest has been really good about supporting our programs, both research as well as our educational programs. So I wanted to mention that. So last year was a good year for us on our variety trials. I hope it was the same for you on your actual commercial fields. I suspect it was. At Carrington, I included these pictures of both our dry land and the irrigated trials. We expanded the number of entries in them, and we had about 40 entries. I wish we had more yet, but that was a pretty good number. And then I listed the trial average at the base of both the dry land and the irrigated, and they came through very nicely. So here's a look at the cover of the book. We did expand the number of tables in it, primarily because our dry bean breeder, Juan Sarno, was able to get his data to us. And so that was very important that we had his data. And then I just listed the website or keywords to access the electronic version of the publication. For those of you who just walked in, we do have some copies of the booklet that Sam Markell is passing out. All right, so I'll just give you a few glimpses of the publication, a few things that might be of interest to you, some new things, and then we'll move on to the next subject. Well, this is a simple yield graph of pinto varieties we've tested over the last couple of years. Note a total of 16 environments, so a pretty substantial database. And this shows the ranking or the performance of varieties that were as compared to the trial mean. And so there's 3 varieties in this small group of pinto varieties that are above that mean, and they included Monterey, Lariat, and Cowboy. Also note that those varieties that are slow darkening, there's only 2 that in this database where we've tested across these years and environments that are slow darkening, Palomino and Vibrant. And then on table 2 in the booklet is a look at last year's performance of quite a few pinto varieties that we did test, and this is the crop of various locations in North Dakota, as well as there's a couple in Minnesota. And so you can look that over. This is the yield and percent of the trial mean for each location. The most important numbers would be the average across all of those locations. And so we'll take a quick look at those. Notice the same varieties that are above the trial mean in the previous slide show up again. They include the cowboy, lariat, and Monterey. But in addition, there's a few others. They include Torian, which has always been a very popular variety, Diamondback, which is actually a slow darkening variety, and then Rattler. These are all above the averages. So if you look closely, you'll see NDSU's newest variety, ND Rodeo. Lionel Sarno at Bean Day last year, he was very excited about showing the data, especially the yield data and other economic characteristics as well. But you look at this data from just last year, it's not quite as exciting, is it? And well, there's one reason for that for sure is right here at Staples. I don't think this is a genetic issue. There must be some problem that occurred there that really brought down the yield for that particular variety way more than others. So if we throw that out, we probably edge above the 100%. But so I'm curious to see what Juan will say about ND Rodeo at Bean Day this at the end of the month, and hopefully it's just aberration. But we're still excited about ND Rodeo, and I think you should be too. All right, so at Carrington, something we do that's unique from other sites is that we do take direct harvest ratings. We do this on a visual basis where we just look and it's the same person that does this and that has done it for quite a few years. It happens to be me. So you can blame numbers on me if you don't like them. But what we do is visually evaluate the amount of beans we think can actually be harvested from the field. And so certainly it's a bit subjective, but as an example, on this side, you notice that you notice that there's quite a bit of plants that are large, a lot of beans on or near the ground. And in this case, estimate would be about 1/3 of the seeds actually would not be harvested, as compared to this side, where the plants are upright, the pods are not on the ground, and the estimate on this one would be about 97% of the beans present would be harvested. Some people said, well, why don't you do the bean counts? I think I mentioned this to you last year. That's a lot of work. But we take volunteers, definitely. I'll be glad to call you when we're ready to do this. You can count beans all you want. But in the meantime, visual evaluation is what we'll do. Okay, with that said, this is a look at table 3 in your booklet. And so we put this together, 4 years of dry land, 5 years of irrigated, and this would be the pinto varieties that we tested during the course of the time. And then, so most important would be the 9-year average. You can see there's some differences there. So hopefully it's some practical information that'll be useful for you beyond the yield comparison and some other things, seed size, disease tolerance, etc. So there's certainly differences. As expected, La Paz is a little bit less on harvestability. Sorry about that. La Paz, Lariat, certainly windbreaker as compared to those that are in the 90s. Don't get too hung up on the numbers. It's more the comparison amongst the varieties versus actual numbers that are present. I tend to be conservative and maybe my numbers are lower than what they should be, but I think you understand. I hope you do. All right, and then of course there weren't a lot of pinto varieties listed in that previous slide. And so this is a picture of our dryland trial at Carrington last year. That includes many more pinto varieties as well as some of the other market classes. So what we do is we do take lodging scores, 0 to 9, where 0, of course, is no lodging, and 9 would be the opposite end. We had one variety, a small red, it's called Ruby, that is terrible. It's based on lodging, harvestability. I would discourage you from considering that one. And then we do have the direct harvest. I wish we had rounded the numbers to whole numbers, but we didn't. And anyway, you can take a look at that. Pay attention to the statistics. If you round the LSD to 5, then if the numbers are greater or 5 or greater, that means there is a difference in the harvestability of some of these. As an example, Cowboy is about 96 here, as compared to La Paz, it would be 89. So there was a statistical difference between them. And if you grow La Paz, you probably realize that it maybe doesn't stand quite as well as some of our newer varieties, but still very popular and very productive variety. You notice I'm not going to give any variety recommendations. I'm just pointing out the information. You guys make that decision. I had a grower that called yesterday from Washburn. He said, well, what variety should I grow next year? And I had as much as I could. And I certainly did not tell him. I just told him, hey, you got this new variety book. Check it out. See what your markets or your marketing, they might have some influence on what varieties you grow as well. So I think I got out of that one. All right, and then one other thing that we expanded on this year in the booklet is that we did list a lot more varieties. We dropped a couple of things. There used to be a description, such as maturity and architecture. We dropped those things on the advice of Juan Osorno, and we thought we just list all the varieties that we've tested and then the source. So if you see information in the booklet that says, hey, I should try this new variety, but then at least you know where to go to try to find details and make that decision. And then we did the same for the other market classes too, for the blacks, navies, and then some of the other minor market types. Okay, so what do we have from NDSU that's coming up in 2024? Well, just yesterday I got an announcement about our variety release committee. I serve on that committee. We're meeting next Monday afternoon, and Juan Osorno will be presenting a pink bean. And so you might wonder, pink bean? Well, we do grow a few of those in the state. In fact, North Dakota grows about 1/3 of the U.S. production, and it's a whopping, on average, about 6,000 acres per year. So not a big deal, but maybe there's some opportunity. So I got this from North Harvest from the website, just to show you what the uses of, and a little bit of description of the pinks. And I'm really not supposed to show you this information, but I'm going to do it anyway. And so anyway, this line of pinks looks very good. For example, a very nice seed yield. I looked at the table. I'm not showing you the table. I'm pushing things the way it is. But anyway, this line is producing 5 to 9 bags more compared to any other pinks in the trial. So that's pretty exciting. And it looks good on plant architecture, on disease tolerance. And yeah, so let's see what happens. So maybe pink is in your future looking at this. So that's all the exciting stuff, and maybe Juan will have more bean day. All right, so let's get into production. I think we're doing pretty well in time. So this is the table I put together, and just recently over the last year, just listing some of the established factors based on trials that we've conducted. There's 7 factors, and they all include pintos, and then there's some where there's blacks and navies included too. So you can look at those. So the intent here is to have you consider, if you're in the option B category for any of these, consider moving to option A. But that's not the final step. I'm going to say this again when I show a similar chart on soybean this afternoon, that the first step is we'd encourage you to go from here to here because of the yield advantage with option A in percentage, and that's based on the trials that we have listed here. And these are trials that we've conducted actually over the last couple of decades, at least some of them. Okay, what else do I want to say? Oh, yeah. So the first step is here to here, possibly, but it doesn't stop here, especially such things as plant stands, because you can fine tune it. Please, well, I know you'll fine tune it based on your farm or based on your field, the varieties you grow, soil type, et cetera, et cetera. If you remember, Dave Franson has these M calculators. You plug in all these numbers, and at the end, he still gives you some wiggle room, plus or minus 30 pounds of N because of the knowledge of your field, the past production of it, yield of it, et cetera. And the same here. We just think this is a good place to be, but you take it from there and make it work for your particular field. Okay, so just to talk about one variety selection. What I did is just that the same table I talked about earlier that I pointed out in the booklet. Notice that those varieties that are above trial average, they range from 1 to 8%. So I just took the average of 4%. So just doing your homework, investigating the data on varieties. And if you can pick those that are better performers, hey, it's a pretty simple way to bump up that yield potential. Now, I also noticed that there's a couple of these that are a bit grayed out. For example, strip till under the tillage system factor. It has a similar yield compared to conventional. But to me, that's really good because you enjoy all the benefits of the strip till system and yet not be concerned about reducing yield because of a tillage system switch. Also, on planting date, notice that we looked at early and late compared to the normal. And at least my definition of normal is right here. And I think this would hit most of you that are producers. You plant in that window. We found with our research that planting earlier, year to year, it hasn't meant poorer yields, but there's certainly more risk with that. So be careful about that. And that's why I grade it. And then the other grade is down here, factor number 6, seed inoculation with rhizobia bacteria. In our survey, it indicates that very few people actually inoculate their bean seed. The people that responded to the survey, about 15% inoculate the seed with rhizobia bacteria. But if that's something you would consider, based on 10 trials, we did see a modest yield increase of about 2%. The seed was inoculated versus not. Was that enough for you to go through that hassle? Well, you can make you can make that decision. So, here's the chart. I'm going to flip back to this a couple times as I talk about some other things, but I do have hard copies of this available up here. So after our hour is up, if you want to come up and have a hard copy of the chart that also includes the soybean chart, please feel free to do so. All right, moving right along. Number 3 is review of some recent NDSU extension publications and more importantly, just a summary of what we found and what we recommend for you. So the last dry bean grower survey we have is from 2022 production season. We will not have a survey for this past season. So you should be really happy about that. One less survey to complete or to be bugged about completing. But I think these survey publications are really good. Whether you're a brand new grower considering growing dry beans or experienced grower, there's just a lot of details in there that may help you fine tune your operation. And definitely for university people, educators, as well as researchers, there's a lot of good information here they use for presentations or to discover gaps in research that, hey, we could fill that in based on what growers are telling us on whatever the production aspect is. Okay, enough said on that. If you want to check it on the web, the keywords are listed there. All right, so since I'm reminiscing a little, I thought I went back and dug in the old crop production guides. And this is way back over 40 years ago, guys, Karlsruhe, irrigated trial. Not a big trial with dry beans, but there's a few in there. Anybody remember Olathe? Yeah. You wish you still had that? I don't think so. Yeah, a few people grew Pindax, but notice names. There's a red Mexican. That's probably illegal to even say anymore. And black turtle. We just call them blacks now. But anyway, I thought it'd be interesting. What I really want to point out is this is 40 years ago, and look what NDSU was planting at. We were planting to establish 70,000 plants per acre for pintos and 90,000 for navies. And yeah, that was 40 years ago. It's probably time we investigated, took another look at planting rates. And we've done that. All right, so going back to that table, I didn't talk about it earlier, but now I will. And that is on plant stands, this would be with pintos. We found that compared to wide rows and around 70,000 plants established, If we bump that up, in 3 trials, we've seen an average of about 5% yield increase. And this is averaging across row spacings. And then if we take row spacing as a sole factor and then average in various stands within that, notice the nice bump in yields when we went to intermediate rows versus wide. And I've talked about this before. The first thing you probably think about is white mold. During our rows, we're going to have white mold problems. Yeah, there might be more of a challenge there, but that's another subject. So anyway, I just want to point out in our work, we've seen some very nice yield increases. And we didn't have white mold in these trials, by the way. All right, so we've done some work over the last decade with the interaction of row spacing and plant populations. We started the work first with black and navy beans, and then we most recently finished up with pinto beans. So what do we find? Well, this is compared to the wide rows and those old plant population recommendations that I showed you when I showed that Carlsruhe data. So with blacks, what we found is there wasn't anything exciting happening when we bumped up the populations, even with the narrow rows. But narrow rows alone, we saw a nice yield increase. With the blacks, a combination of narrow rows right here and a plant population early season of at least 115,000 plants gave us opportunity for substantial yield increases. And then for pintos, what we found in immediate rows were better than wide, as you would suspect. And when we had plant populations, something above 80,000, you can figure out where the stopping point is. But that's what we found when we looked at those 2 factors over years and environments. Some of this work was done it was done at Carrington, certainly. Some was done in the Valley, and some was done at the Langdon with Brian Hansen's help. And Hans Kendall, who I forgot to mention earlier. There's Hans. We miss him. He was our state agronomist, and I guess he came here for the breakfast and very see what's up. So anyway, very, very good to have you, Hans. All right, moving on. In the past, I've talked a little bit about using winter rye as a cover crop before pinto beans. And I'm going to mention it again. We put the publication together. If you're interested in the details, they're available. You can find it by using these keywords in a web search. And what we're after, it was 3 things that we're trying to answer. First is, if we use this system, can we still maintain our pinto bean seed yield? The simple answer is yes. Take some management, but yes, you can. Plus, realize the benefits. What we're really after was a great reduction in erosion control and some help with weed control. Okay, so the next question was rye termination timing. Through this period, when we were conducting this work, we always had some dry conditions in May or into June, and topsoil moisture, the rye growing was always a concern. We're trying to balance, okay, we want that rye as long as possible, to realize the benefits as long as possible, but we also do not want to dry out the topsoil and inhibit the establishment of the pinto bean, and most importantly, not have yield reduction of the pinto bean. So we found under those conditions that by terminating the rye, we need to do that at least 2 weeks before planting. We always plant at the end of May or the first part of June. But if your topsoil moisture is good, more rain is predicted, certainly keep that rye going because of benefits, including the weed suppression. We found that if we let the rye go until planting time, or even after, when you plant the dry bean green, that the weed suppression was as good as using a pre-emergence herbicide. Okay, so I think that's all I'll say regarding that. Dave Franson, our extension soil specialist, over the last year has revised the plant nutrition or fertilizer guide. And our recommendations on N are the same. With P and K revised slightly. What's interesting is that with phosphorus, we recommend application of phosphorus, even if our soil tests say high. And that's definitely different compared to our recommendations on soybean. On K, really no big worries. If you're medium or higher on your soil analysis for potassium, you're good. You don't have to worry about that. We also, in fact, last month revised our publication on pinto bean response to phosphorus starter fertilizer. And note on the 7th factor from this table that we found a nice response with in-furrow or band application. In this case, we're using 1034 at modest rates. We'd suggest 3 gallons per acre. Go higher than that, then there's some real concern, especially if the soil is dry at all, about reducing plant populations. But we saw some nice yield response compared to broadcast application, which is contrary to past recommendations. All right, and then zinc. Yeah, this is from AgVice. This was information that just came out summarizing what they found in soil tests submitted. And notice that zinc is deficient in North Dakota. That's no surprise, especially in this region. Maybe these others less, but still a lot of soil samples, about half that show a deficiency in zinc. That's less because probably because of the corn history, and the corn is responsive to low zinc levels as well. So once bit of data I'll show with you is we did some work at Carrington, 5 years of work where we applied a zinc chelate either in furrow application, not planting, and compared it to foliar application. Foliar application was early reproductive stage, 1 to 2 weeks after the blossom started occurring. And this data would indicate that if we go to that rescue treatment, foliar application, that it can still allow us to expect some very good yields compared to making application at planting time. And this was with zinc levels that were very low. I think I had those listed someplace. Maybe not, but you'll have to take my word for it. It was 0.5 or less for zinc levels. And then finally, future educational events. I've talked about Bean Day a couple times. That's a good one. It's coming up in 2 weeks from tomorrow in Fargo with the Holiday Inn. It's a full day of information. Yeah, I strongly advise you taking that in if that day is open for you. And then we are continuing our Getting It Right program. Hans Kandel started this a decade or so ago with soybean. We've expanded to other crops, including dry bean. And we do have a dry bean webinar coming up the end of this month on January 30th. And you can easily register. There's no cost, but you must pre-register. Go on the web, type in NDSU Getting It Right. You'll find the page where you can do this. Or if you're really quick, you can scan this QR code. Or if you're not so quick, you can walk up here after our talk. I got the same QR code right here. And you can be registered in 10 seconds. Okay? At no cost. You get a whole half morning of information on what's NDSU's recommendations on dry beans.
Watch it later.
Yes. For example, we had our soybean Getting It Right on December 19th. And as of yesterday, we got the last of the videos posted. So if you missed that program, missed the live webinar, you can go and take a look at the videos. All right, so we're doing pretty well on time. While Sam comes up and gets ready to present, maybe there's a question too I can take regarding what I presented.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Greg. Excellent presentation. So I'm going to give you a few updates. I'm Sam Markell. I'm an extension plant pathologist. I work on diseases. I'll give you a few updates on white mold, on soybean cyst nematode, and on bacteria blight. And I'll spend the majority of the time actually on white mold. And the reason is that Michael Bunch at Carrington is really optimizing these fungicide applications to the point where subtle changes in timing are worth hundreds of pounds. It's quite remarkable. So I'll go through quite a bit of his information, and hopefully I really want you to understand that. So if you don't, I want you to stop me, because that is the most important thing I'm going to talk about today. The update I'll give you on soybean cyst is pretty simple. It continues to move. It's not common in this region yet, but there's been a bunch of variety screenings. We have a lot better information on which varieties are moderately resistant, moderately susceptible, and I'll give you some QR codes to find that. And then the bacterial blights, I'm going to talk about that just for a few minutes and talk about a couple of varieties where some of the newer ones are starting to become moderately resistant. And I think that's going to be a big change for us over time. Is there anything else that you want to talk about on the disease front before I get going? Okay, don't hesitate to stop me if there's something you want to talk about.
I need my coffee.
More coffee? I can't get you more coffee. I guess I can point to it. All right, so we'll start with white mold, and just a quick refresher of how it works, so we're all on the same page. Yeah, this is touchy. White mold overwinters as these black structures. They're really hard. They're called sclerotia, and they're all over the fields right now, right? So they last a long time. Even if we didn't have white mold in the last year or two, these things will last 5 to 10 years. So we have these around. When you get into the spring and you have enough water, they pop out these little mushrooms and they release spores. They're called ascospores, but the spores pretty much start the process. Okay, so once you see these mushrooms pop up, and they're small, they're like the head of an eraser size, there's spores everywhere. Now the spores have a weak spot. So lots of pathogens, rusts, they just land on the leaf, they infect, they do their thing, right? With white mold, it's not that way. They need some dying tissue, and most of the time it's flowers. So they need floral tissue. Now, the same pathogen infects dry beans, soybeans, sunflower. It goes across all of these. And this is a good example on a sunflower leaf, where you can see a spore landed on the little floret. It infected that floret, and then that floret landed on a leaf, and that's how the disease moved through the plant. Okay, so it didn't infect the leaf right away. It didn't infect the stem or anything else. It infected the little flower. Okay, that's the way it works in all of the broadleaf crops. It's the same. So historically, we'd always say, well, spray in the bloom stages, right? And that's because the flowers are out, the plants are susceptible. But Michael's starting to refine that. That's one of the things we'll talk about. And of course, once it gets into the plant, it'll continue to grow. And you've all seen this in probably every broadleaf crop you've grown. They will produce those little black structures over winters, cycle repeats. Right? This is generally how it works. Okay, so a few things about managing white mold with fungicides. So when I started about 15 or so years ago, we always said, well, you got to spray in the bloom stages, but we didn't have a lot more information about what that meant exactly. That's where we have that. So we're going to walk through some of this. Fungicide efficacy is good. We've got multiple products that work, but one thing that seems consistent over multiple products, doesn't matter if it's Topsin or Endure or whatever, is that there is a rate response. So if you're going to use Topsin, for example, 20 ounces is a lot less efficacious than 30 or 40. So be careful about cutting rates. There's information about this. Michael Bunch, I mentioned, at Carrington is really leading the way here. And he's got a mist system that is, I swear, it's like a half a mile long, or it feels like that. He's got a long rotation. He creates these just killer environments for white mold where he can separate out some things that's hard to see in the field. So that's where I'm going to go with this for a few minutes. So the one series of questions that I want to pose to you and try to help answer is related to timing. So we know that timing can be a little different if the canopy is open or if the canopy is closed. We know that you're using, in some cases, 1 application, 2 applications. Well, if you're using different numbers of applications, then the timing, in theory, should be a little different, right? So Michael's trying to answer those questions. That's what I'm going to walk through this with. This is the way his data is presented. It's awesome data, but it takes me about a half an hour to figure it out. Okay, so this is you'll be able to see all of this, but what I'm going to do is break it down, and hopefully you can kind of see the process. So if you want to go get his data, it's a little easier to understand. Okay, so we're going to start like this. The first thing I would mention is that these trials, there's 5 of them. He's breaking them apart based on canopy level. So what I'm going to show you first is when the canopy is open, right? So less than 95% closed, maybe it's 60, 70, 80, but it's still open. So if you have an open canopy and you're growing pinto beans, what's the timing look like? Okay. He's using, in all of these, he's using 15 gallons an acre. With one application, he's using Topsin at 30 to 40 ounces. If it's two, it's Topsin plus Endura, right? With all of these. All right, so canopy's open. The question is, what's the timing? So here are his treatments. So he's got a non-treated, so no spray at all. And then he's looking at pin pods. Okay, so he's not looking at numbers of flowers or florets. He's looking at these little pin pods. So as a bloom starts to die, you have these little tiny needle-like structures, right? He's shown over time that that is a much better indicator for timing. Okay, so this is the percent plants with pin pods. Okay, so less than 10% plants with pin pods, 10 to 40, 50 to 70, 70 to 85. Okay, so that's what it's based on, the percent plants with these little tiny pin pods. All right, he's looking at whether you apply a single application or two applications. We're just going to focus on one application to start with, then we'll go back to it. Okay, so he's got these trials. He's putting down a fungicide. In this case, it's 30 or 40 ounces of Topsin. And what he's seeing first is white mold severity. Okay, so the non-treated here, come on, the non-treated has 47% severity. And that's what that 47 is. So basically half this thing is infected already when he hasn't sprayed. Or so with one in the non-treated, there's no spray, right? So at the end of the season, half of it's infected. He waited a little bit till there were a few pin pods, but less than 10%. Severity starts to drop. He waited a little longer. Severity's dropping slowly. He waited till there's 50 to 75%. Or 70 to 85%, severity is down a lot, statistically different, okay? So in this environment, with an open canopy, he's waiting until almost all the plants have these pin pods, okay? So what does that mean with yield? Well, in the non-treated, where it didn't get sprayed, it's 2,300 pounds. It's a good yield, right? High yield environment, high white mold environment. As he waits, yield starts to increase to the point by the time, to the point where he's at 50 to 70% pin pods to 70 to 85% pin pods. He's 300, 400, 500 pounds higher just by waiting a little bit. Okay, now the rationale here is that the canopy, remember, is open, right? It's not closed yet. So the environment is not quite as favorable. When that canopy closes, it's wet till noon. It's just a perfect environment for this pathogen, right? But if it's open, there's a chance there's air movement. It's not as infectious. So in an open canopy, he can wait, okay? Now the next little chart here is the difference in yield between the non-treated. So this is the non-treated, okay? You start to wait a little bit. It's 100 pounds higher, 137. 136, a little bit more, but by the time you wait till half the plants have pin pods, you're up 300, 369 here. Okay, with me? So the message here is that what he's found when you have an open canopy, and in his environment, this was in the high temperatures were in the low 80s, okay? So not super favorable for temperature, but very favorable for moisture. For a single application, the best bang for your buck was to delay that application until the majority, almost all the plants had these little pin pods. Okay, dramatic difference, 300 to 400 pounds, just by delaying a little bit. You know, that's a few days delay, and I know you're dodging rainstorms and everything, but that's what he's been able to show. Do you have a question? Yes, sir.
When you say percentage of plants that have pin pods, you mean sometimes it's confusing. Is that meaning one plant has a pod on it, or is it percentage of blooms that develop pods?
My understanding of the way he does it is if he's got 100 plants, if 50 of them have at least one pin pod, that would be 50%. That make more sense? Yeah. That's how he does that, right? That's what I understand. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'll confirm. I got his report right over there that I was thumbing through, but I'm 99% sure that's what it is. Thank you for the question. Okay, so let's look at 2 applications. And so I'm going to go through this just a little quicker. Same setup here, right? So you have the same treatments, non-treated, and these different levels of pin pods. He's got 2 applications, and we'll go through them one at a time. So here's the 2 applications. First application in all these cases is going to be Thompson. Second in all the cases is Endura. When he's got 2 applications in the non-treated, it's 47% disease. It's 2,318 pounds. That's the yield. Okay. You wait a little bit, so 10% plants or less have pin pods. Disease drops right away, drops down to 29%, and yield goes up. What is that? 400 pounds. Yeah. Wait a little longer. Yield continues to increase just a little bit, not statistically different. Okay. The difference here is that if you're putting down 2 applications, logically, you don't have to wait as much. The second application was always 10 to 14 days later. Okay. The yield increase is pretty dramatic, right? In this particular case, he's showing these yield gain graphs. This took me a second to understand, but what he's got here is 5 different studies. In 3 of those studies, which is what this arrow is pointing at, there are dramatic yield differences as you wait. In 2 of the studies, there's really no difference in timing. That's related to environment. Okay. What I would say here, so we talked about single application. On the bottom is 2 applications. Odds are, if you still delay that application to at least 50% of the plants have 1 pin pod, you're going to see a significant yield increase. Okay. In both cases, what he's showing is a little bit more delayed than what we would normally think of as the optimal time. And in both cases, over 5 different location years, he's found the same result. Okay. I get if you're dodging a rainstorm, that's really tough, right? But in optimal spray conditions, waiting a little bit until you see those pin pods is going to make a big difference. Any questions about that? Okay, a little bit quicker. Let's go through closed canopy. Okay, that was open canopy. This is closed canopy, right? Same exact setup. He's got his treatments here. Basically the same amount of pin pods we're talking about. He's doing 1 app versus 2 apps. We'll go through the 1 app first. So closed canopy, there's a lot more disease in this. Okay, that makes sense, right? Perfect environment. So non-treated, he's got 87% of the severity. That's a lot. And as he waits, not a lot of difference. Not a lot of difference. Canopy's closed, more favorable. Yield? Yeah, that's not a lot of yield, right? It doesn't matter until you get to about 10 to 20% pin pods. And after that, you don't see much of an increase by waiting. Okay? In a closed canopy, you wait till you have about 10% or more. That's enough. Don't wait any longer because you don't have any more yield gain. So it's a difference between the open and the closed. Oops. Go ahead. Do you have a question? No? Okay. But the rubber really meets the road in 2 applications when you have a closed canopy. So here's the same thing. You've got a lot of disease, you've got low yield. So 87% severity, 1,200 pounds. When you wait a little bit, it's about a 460 pound gain. You wait till 10 to 20, it's almost a 1,000 pound gain. But if you miss that window when it's closed, the yield starts to drop pretty quick. So when you have a closed canopy, a single application, you can wait a little bit. But if you're going with 2, hit it right away. As soon as you see those pin pods, spray it. Okay, with me? All right, I'm just going to summarize a couple things quick. Other things he's found, as the canopy begins to close, you want to increase your droplet size because it's hard for fine droplets to penetrate the closed canopy. Makes sense. Water volume, he's been testing this a lot, and it makes me a little uncomfortable to say, but he's found almost no differences between 10 gallons an acre, 15 gallons an acre, 20 gallons an acre, and 25 gallons an acre. Okay. Makes me a little uneasy, but that's what he's seen. That's what the data is saying. Okay. And then the last thing is he's got information that there's multiple fungicides that are effective. Okay, so you can get this information at a couple different spots. So first you can go to Bean Day and talk to Michael. You can sit him down and he'll talk. He knows what he's doing. He's good. You can go to the dry bean research reports. There's a lot there. That QR code will take you right to the North Harvest Dry Bean Grower Research Report magazine. So the whole thing is just research reports. It's excellent. Or you can go to Michael's webpage, and that's what the second QR code is. And he has reports and presentations of the same material. Again, they're complicated graphs, but piece by piece, they have just a tremendous amount of information. And it's really, really economically important. Any questions about white mold?
Those are inoculated trials, so that's it.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. This is the worst disease pressure known to man. Right? Michael does a great job. He's probably, like literally putting the spores on at midnight when it's cool, that sort of thing. Yeah, but it does help separate what's going on in your fields. It's just his is the extreme version. Okay, a couple things, and I'll make this really quick. Soybean cyst nematode, we've talked a lot about this, parasitic worm. We know this will infect dry beans. This is a picture of kidneys. This is on the Minnesota side of the river, which is fortunate. It has the same kind of symptomology, stunts them, turns them yellow, that sort of thing. We know that this is expanding across the US, right? And this has been happening for the last 7 decades or so, and it continues to expand, but it expands really slowly. The North Dakota Soybean Council has been really helpful in helping us figure out where this is, and they've been supporting a grower-based sampling program. So this is the state of North Dakota. Anything you see with color is a positive find of varying levels, right? And then this little inset of kind of the southeast, east central is kind of gives you an indication of severity. So anything that's yellow or red is pretty hot, but you can see that line kind of drop off. We don't have a lot of it here. There are a couple of confirmations, but a good example is Scott Kanoki. I think he took 25 or 30 samples from Benson, not this season, but the previous season. They were all negative, right? So it's not super common yet, but that'll change. But what I wanted to share with you is that we have a lot of varieties out there, and we've always kind of known a little bit about the genetics for resistance, but now we know more. So this comes from Weeping Ann. She's the nematologist at NDSU, and I'm just going to get rid of her graph and try to make this a little easier to understand. On the bottom are a whole bunch of different varieties, and they're color-coded by market class, okay? The bigger the bar, or the higher the bar, the more susceptible they are, okay? And this doesn't look great, except this top blue line that I threw in above the S, that's what a susceptible soybean looks like, right? That blue bar on top is 100, right? So most of the varieties that we have are kind of moderately susceptible or so. We don't have any that are burning down like a true susceptible soybean. We also don't really have anything that's truly resistant. It's kind of a mixed message. When I saw this initially, I thought, okay, this is pretty good, because I was pretty nervous that most of our stuff was really truly susceptible, and I don't think it is. This data would suggest that most of the market classes have some varying level of moderately resistant, moderately susceptible. So this information is here, and so you probably made many of the decisions already this year, but if soybean cyst becomes a concern on your farm, you can go here and get this and include it in just the selection process of varieties. And this is also available other places. Questions about that? All right, last thing, a little bit about bacteria. What I really want to show you, and you all know bacteria pretty well because it happens almost every year in almost every field. So Juan Osorno has been breeding against common bacterial blight, which is our main problem for quite a few years, and it's starting to bear fruit. So the way that he rates these, or the way that we generally rate them, is on a 1 to 9 scale. 9 is like super susceptible, like smells bacteria, dies. 1 is super resistant, which doesn't exist. in a variety, right? But what he's been doing is he's been slowly picking away at it. And so a couple of these pinto and slow dark pintos, rodeo and falcon, they're rated at 4. So you're getting to the point where we're talking about a little bit of moderate resistance. The same thing with blacks. Twilight is actually kind of moderately resistant. And then navy polar is sort of moderately resistant. And I'm excited about these pintos in particular. Part of the reason I'm sharing this with you, and he's going to talk about this more, I think, is that we've had really poor luck managing bacterial blight with any chemical applications, cupric hydroxides or whatever. I think with some of these varieties, our luck will change. I think that becomes more viable because there's a little natural resistance. Okay, that's all I have for you. I'm going to leave you with this. Just like Greg said in a much more eloquent way and pretty pictures, the Bean Day's great, getting it right. You can visit us there. And then again, the driving research reports and then Michael Bunch's homepage where you can find more white mold information. And you can certainly ask me about any of this as well. Any questions? Anything on your mind? Yes, sir.
On Michael Bunch's talk last year at B-Day, he was talking about droplet size. So is that still what you suggest, a lower pressure for penetrating the canopy?
Yeah, the question was about droplet size. Yeah. So Michael's work in general, and there's some variation depending on market class and all this other stuff, but in general, when the canopy's open, a fine to medium droplet is probably best because you get really good coverage. But after it's closed, we're looking at coarse, maybe very coarse, depending on your nozzle, because you just cannot penetrate into the spot where all those blooms are in the low sensitive part of the plant. So it's a pretty significant switch. One of the reasons that I think his data is so extreme with this timing is that he's using what he learned in those studies. So he's switching out his nozzles between the first and the second application. He's following his own recommendations. But yeah, so just in general, when the canopy's open, fine to medium is better. When the canopy's closed, coarse to even very coarse is better. That's a good question.
Basically lower pressure.
Yeah, you can adjust it that way. Anything to change, anything to change the droplet size, not the nozzle size. Sorry. Oh. Thank you. All right, well, I really appreciate your time and happy to talk after if you wish. Thank you.